I feel like I got so lucky because when I moved to Seattle, there was a creative director at the studio. The studio was called Superfad, but it's not around anymore. But it was a really kind of fun, progressive studio at the time that was doing a lot of like Phantom super slow-mo shoots right when the Phantom was first came out. So not a lot of people were doing it. You know, it wasn't
like
quite
5,000 frames a second is like the new norm.
Yeah, exactly. And at the time it was novel, you know, but now it's like you could shoot it on an iPhone. There was this creative director named David Viau who I actually just had lunch with the other day, but he was just a savant. He was brilliant at pitching. Like the dude could bang out a set of boards, and I call them boards. It's like not traditional storyboards, but like, you know, 8 panels of concept art of what, you know, hopefully the spot will end up looking like. And a lot of this was live action design hybrid. So it wasn't like viz dev painting either. It was like more photo comping with 3D, you know, to ultimately achieve a result that the agency would look at and be like, okay, that's what our commercial is going to look like. So he could bang out a set of 8 frames to depict a 30-second spot in, I don't know, 24 hours, you know, if he was really under the gun, and they would look fantastic, you know. And he'd use Cinema 4D and a lot of Photoshop, a lot of photo reference and comping and stuff like that, and some lighting techniques and things. So I really learned a lot of technique from him, and like the bar that needed to be hit in terms of concept and sort of just the landscape of the ad industry to what their expectations were. So I learned a lot of the kind of the craft from him, but also the owner of the company, one of the owners, because it was a multi-studio company, Will Hyde. He had this ability to always look for new angles in terms of the conceptual component of it, you know. And so I really learned, like, there's obvious, and now as I get further into my entertainment career, there's always, you know, you're going down these pathways where you're standing on the shoulders of all this stuff that's been done before you, and your first tendency is usually to think about something that you know, right? Because that's the stuff that pops up into your head, things that are same as, right? Or, okay, we're talking about this project and there are these other 10 things before it that feel like inspirations for it. And so the trick is always to get beyond all those, well, let's just call them cliches, right? The things that have happened prior, and to find the new mashup of them or the new angle or whatever it is. So Will had this great ability to look at things and always kind of search for that new angle. And that's kind of the conceptual and the craft part of it. But man, I remember being on the phone for the first time, and nobody was doing Zoom calls back then. It was all just conference calls, you know, on those, like the circular set top speaker.
That's right.
Little conference tables. And I remember being on my first phone call and I was just shaking the first time I got to speak, you know. And I remember realizing later as I went, I was like, nobody is judging anybody individually. Everybody's too concerned about the way they sound personally. So and of course I was just a young whippersnapper at the time, but yeah, I mean, that's where I learned. And I think what I learned was just always to push it, you know, always to push the boundaries, you know. And I think the more I've learned throughout my career is sometimes not to overthink it, you know, that like that your first instinct, or if you really feel it, then it comes very naturally. And if you don't, and you try to force it, or you try to work too hard at it, sometimes it's just futile and it doesn't work out.
No, it's really fascinating.
Because I got this call in August or September. They asked me to pitch on it. I had very little time. So I basically slapped together a pitch. This is one of those occasions that I was mentioning or referring to earlier, where I had very little time. I had like a day and a half to put this pitch together. You know, typically in the past, I would have at one of these other studios, I would have hired some artists and some board artists, and I would have done some storyboards, and I would have done a whole song and dance to try to win a project like this. But I just didn't have the time. So I just used reference as much as I could. I felt like I had an opinion about it. I couldn't second guess it. So I just slapped it all together, and I felt it came very naturally. We'll put it that way. It came out very naturally. And I also was inspired by my grandpa. So I had a really good like through line into the tone of what I wanted it to be, and shipped the pitch off. And sure enough, I got a call back from him. I was actually in Mammoth on like a little vacation with my 3-month-old at the time. Wow. And I ended up having to, the hotel internet was terrible. So I had to go and rent they had like this little WeWork space in Mammoth. And I went in there to take the call with Tim and Jen and Jed and Victoria all for the first time. It was sort of strange. And yeah, I mean, I could tell on the very first call that they liked my pitch enough that I was probably going to get the job.